25 minutes past 7. As you can see, parts of the UK were treated to another display of the northern lights last night. The unusually bright auroras we've seen recently were the result of a major geomagnetic storm.
I suppose there's no harm to stargazers here on Earth. The British Geological Survey says the storm interfered with communications and satellite navigation, prompted NASA to delay a planned space launch. Let's have a look at some of the best pictures from the last 2 days.
And many thanks, of course, to all of you who sent those pictures in. We can talk to Gemma Richardson, who's a geomagnetism hazard specialist at the British Geological Survey. Dr. Richardson, firstly, congratulations on a fantastic title. It's a brilliant job title. Welcome to the programme. Did you get to see it?
No, not last night. It was very rainy in Edinburgh.
Absolutely. So this is what it comes down to. So, but the impact the impact of this has been significant. So let's talk about the science behind the spectacle in terms of what happened to cause this magnetic storm.
OK, so over the 9th, 10th and 11th of November, each day there were what we call an X-class solar flare left the sun. And associated with each of those flares was what's called a coronal mass ejection. So it's a huge explosion out into space where you get basically an eruption of superheated gas from the sun. So part of the sun's corona, like its atmosphere, fires out into space. And as they travel through space, eventually they hit our Earth's magnetic field and can give it lots and lots of energy. So the first two of those arrived not last night, but the night before, and caused a really big storm. And the third one we were expecting to be even bigger when it arrived yesterday, but actually it wasn't as big. So we had a storm, but it wasn't quite as big as we were maybe expecting.
And Dr. Richardson, tell us a bit more about the geomagnetic element of that. What effect does that have?
So the geomagnetic part is what we call a geomagnetic storm. Once it's hit our Earth's magnetic field, it makes the magnetic field itself very, very variable. It adds lots and lots of energy to the system. So lots of things, there's lots of electrical current systems get set up in the atmosphere. And what can happen is that can then, what we call induce an electric current in the ground. And that current can flow into things like power systems and cause a bit of disruption. So this particular storm wasn't really big enough to really cause a concern, but it was worth us raising so that people were aware and knew that if there was started to be any fluctuations, it was understood what was causing it.
Yeah, I mean, we just said a moment ago that NASA postponed a space launch because of this storm. I mean, that sounds quite significant. Why would they have postponed the launch?
Well, so as I said, space weather kind of affects this area of the atmosphere called the ionosphere, and it can make it very, very variable, and it can increase drag on things like satellites as they pass through that region. So if you've planned your space launch to put your satellites at a certain altitude and then move them up higher, if you do that during a magnetic storm, basically your calculations can be off a little bit because the drag is increased, and it can just increase the risk of damaging your satellite, or ultimately, if you get it completely wrong, the satellite can then completely fail, as happened a few years ago. So they were trying to avoid that, which is probably a good idea.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gemma Richardson, for your expertise. And I'm going to repeat it again, Gemma, your title, Geomagnetism Hazard Specialist. We like that title, so thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
And she's earned it as well.
So alongside those, our BBC weather watchers have been sending in some photographs of their own. Let's take a little look through.
Didn't we see this one with Matt earlier? This is a shot of a house with a light display in the background, and that was taken at Westwood Hoe in Devon. And what's quite surprising is that we were told usually it was the north of England that would get the best of the Aurora Borealis. But actually, because of this magnetic storm, much further south, you have been able to see it.
Let's see another image now. Green colours often associated with the northern lights. Very clear, you can see. This is Findocti in Moray overnight. So this was a picture, we're told, that was taken near the coast.
You know, green's the most common colour you see in the Aurora Borealis.
Does it? Beautiful.
It's about the oxygen content in the air. I learnt that the other day. And this viewer has managed to capture the aurora alongside a rainbow. That is special. And we can show you one from Australia, where they're, of course, called the Southern Lights. You can love that shimmering.
Beautiful images, those.